guys in the dark.
This all began when I was a freshman, back in 2009, so it really wasn't that recent. It all began during my first couple of weeks of school. I went to this school district all my life. I never had any real issues, since I had no enemies and I only had friends. So anyways, it all began one Friday afternoon after school. I was hanging out with friends outside of the school until my mom had came to pick me up, when I decided to go upstairs to my locker, put a textbook away that I originally was going to bring home for the weekend. When I got to my locker, there was a note taped onto it. My name was written on it, with a heart around it, so I decided to read it. It was a love letter, signed by my secret admirer. Thinking that it was a friend just playing a prank on me, I laughed it off. I tossed it in the trash. When I confronted them downstairs, they all denied what they had put on a note that was on my locker, and insisted that it was probably from a boy. I didn't know what to think, but I did think of a few cute guys that I went to school with and hoped that it would be from them. But I sighed, and I thought that it could have just been, most likely, none of them, and nobody in particular. I waited until about 2 hours after school to grab my belongings out of my locker, including all of my photos. I put them in my backpack, and I headed on outside and hung outside the football field with my friends until people started showing up for the game, to which we all walked around, or sat in the grass and talked for the rest of the evening. When I got home that night, I gave my mom the photos. She noticed that one of the wallet-sized photos had been cut off from the rest. I never bothered to look at all of them. I wasn't even aware of this. I told her that I didn't cut them off, but she didn't believe me. I didn't know what to think about that. A few weeks had gone by, but I had forgotten all about the missing photo. I found another note taped to my locker. This time, one of my school photos was in it, with a heart drawn around my head. A wallet-sized photo. The note mentioned of how beautiful I looked during the game, sitting with my friends inside the grass area, talking and laughing. This made me very uncomfortable. Whoever was doing this had stolen one of my photos either out of my locker during school or on that Friday while I left my backpack unattended during the football game. Once again, I thought that it was probably one of my friends playing a prank on me. I didn't say anything about it this time. It had several months in between the last note. Things looked rather stressful, turned following the weekend. I was at home after school one day alone while my mom was working a double shift when someone came knocking on my front door. Thinking that it was a pesky neighbor, I took my sweet time to answer it. I opened up the door to find nobody there. I looked around, and I saw nothing but mobile homes and neighbors' cars. I had shut the door, and then I resumed what I was doing. I heard the knocking once again, about 10 minutes after. I took my time once again to answer it, and I found Mike, one of our only friendly male neighbors there, with his Boston Terrier on a leash. He asked me if I had somebody over, which I didn't. He then told me that he saw somebody snooping around my home a few minutes ago. I felt uncomfortable. I told him that I didn't have anybody over. I asked him who it was, and he said he didn't recognize the person. I thanked him and locked all of my doors and my windows after he left. The next month was full of incidents where our motion sensor backlight would come on in the evening. It was capped off by my mom calling the police after she found a dead rabbit nailed to our back porch in a rather cruel fashion. At the time, I could have never imagined that the notes, the snooping around, and now the dead rabbit was the work of someone who had been stalking me in the shadows for the last several months. But it all came into fruition the following day at school. I found the final note taped to my locker. There was a big bulge in it. When I took it apart, the foot of a rabbit fell out onto the floor and right in front of me. I shrieked in terror as a teacher had come running up to me. I pointed out the rabbit's foot. He picked it up and asked me where it had come from. I showed him the note, and we immediately went to the office, showed the vice principal what we had found. Later on in the day, I was called into the office, and I found my mom there with the principal and the vice principal. It was there that I had to recount the events over the last couple of months for the first time to anyone, and give the names of students that I think may have been responsible based on any suspicious interactions that I had throughout any social media or in school. But I never had anyone that seemed off to me. They told me that if anything were to happen once again, to let them know, and they'll get the police involved if my life appears to be in danger. My mom had already contacted a state trooper who visited our home the previous night about the rabbit's foot being found on my locker at school, and how a student may have been involved in it. From that day onward, nothing else had majorly happened. However, about halfway through my junior year, I got another love letter. This time, instead of it being written by hand, it was taped out and signed Your Secret Admirer from freshman year. I had just about forgotten about what had happened during my freshman year. I kept this note, and I gave it to my principal, who kept it as evidence in case things had escalated once again. But they never did. Luckily, nothing else happened afterwards. At least, not that was obvious to me. I was 20 years old. I'm a female. I started working at a call center during this time. It was a team of around 40 people, so we didn't exactly know each other very well. There was this one guy who was 35 years old. I'll just call him Craig, who I could always sense was watching me. He had perfect view of me at my desk from his. His gaze would follow me whenever I would walk anywhere. I never paid much attention to it because I didn't know him all that well. One day I turned up to work and was called over by a couple of girls that I was friends with. I knew something was up because of the way that they were acting. They explained Craig had messaged one of them asking for my number, saying how he has known me. I was immediately uncomfortable. There was quite an age gap between us, and he always gave me this weird vibe. I felt weird, but I sort of brushed it off. I laughed with all of my friends. I didn't let him get my number, though. That day we found out Craig had lost his shit at the office after the rest of the staff had left the day before. He was abusing management, throwing things around the office. He ended up being fired and banned from the building. Later on that night, I received a message request on Facebook. It was from him. The message said how attractive he thought that I was, how he could never stop staring at my ass, the fantasies that he always had about me. Basically just really disgusting stuff to hear off someone you have never had a conversation with. So that's when I had started. For the next 5 months, I got messages every single day. Management and security at work were all informed of what was going on. As we all had concerns that he would turn up to the office to see me, I was in constant worry that he would try to find me, as his messages became extremely explicit of what he wanted to do with me sexually. I thought of just blocking him, but all of my friends said that something like that could aggravate him. I just put up with the messages and the calls until one day it just stopped, and I really don't know why to this very day, but I am thankful that it did. This story takes place when I was around 17. I lived with my dad in a very small apartment that was in a questionable area. It was the type of area that you would not want to be out and about when the sun goes down. Up until a certain time, which was like around 10 or 11 o'clock, there would be a cop or two in the area patrolling and making sure that there was no gang-related activities going on. I had a job at a restaurant in the city, which was about a 30-minute car ride and an hour-and-a-half train ride. The train was a couple of blocks away from my place. Since my dad was always too lazy or hungover to drive me, that was my main form of transportation. I went to work around 3 p.m., would usually get home around 12, possibly 1. This was my schedule, 4 days a week, aside from having my school. I would see a lot of familiar faces on the train because of this, but we never really made conversation with anybody. Until one night, when I had gotten out of work late because some assholes had wanted to sit in the restaurant, past time closing. Thanks to them, I had missed my train. The next one wasn't scheduled to arrive for another hour or so. So having nowhere to go, no money for Lyft or Uber, I sat there, waiting. No one was around me, so when this older man showed up, kind of staggering a bit, I assumed that he was another drunken hobo in the city, just trying to catch a train to sleep in. Something about his face had given me deja vu. I shrugged it off. I thought maybe I'd seen him on the train here and there. He made his way over to me, much to my discomfort, and started up a conversation. He wasn't slurring, but the way he was looking down at me gave me goosebumps. He asked me why I was out there so late, all by myself. I had to reply, as to not put anger in him. I mean, we were alone, and he was close enough to pull out a knife or something on me. Anyways, I told him that I was waiting for the train. He asked me which one. Now, the train was color-coded with the stripe at the top indicating whether it goes north, south, east, or west. I took blue, but I lied and said that I had taken green. He looked at the schedule above the benches and saw that the green train was coming in 15 minutes, so he said that he would just keep me company. For those extremely long 15 minutes, he asked me how long I had been working at this restaurant. This made my blood run cold. I never told him where I worked. I just looked at him and very timidly answered, for about a year. He laughed and said, "Wow, it's already been a whole year, huh?" At this point, my skin was itching out of anxiety, and as soon as the green train had came, I knew I had no choice but to take it. I told him goodbye and thanked him for the chat, hoping that would be the end of it. No. He suddenly told me that he took the green train too, so he followed me on and sat in the seat right behind me. My mind was racing about whether he was going to try and do something to me, like chloroform me or hurt me in some other way. We rode the train in silence. I was trying to figure out how I was going to lose him. There weren't very many people riding the train at that hour. Our car was pretty much empty. As the ride went on in menacing silence, I could feel him staring down the back of my head. I waited until we got to a stop where there was another person, and I was so relieved to see a woman sitting there. She was boarding, so I immediately got off the train, and the man had followed me, as I expected him to. I took a seat on a bench next to hers, close enough for her to see and hear everything going on, hoping that she would catch on. The man noticed that I was sniffling, allergies, and being out in the cold, and asked me if I was sick. I told him no, but he insisted on giving me those weird pills he had that were supposedly cold medicine. I declined it in an even louder voice. "I'm sorry, but I don't accept pills from strangers." This prompted the lady to look at us. I made eye contact with her. She now knew. This all went on until a blue train had came, and the lady got up, giving me a look that told me to get on with her. So without any explanation, I did. She waved me over to sit down next to her when the man had come to follow me. She told him no. "You go sit over there." She made him sit a couple of seats across from us. He chose the one where he could face us, and stared at me the entire time. I was shaking and about to burst into tears. The woman had leaned over and whispered to me that she had a pistol. I felt a lot safer with her there. She whispered back and forth about what had happened with me. I told her where I lived and how I was worried that he would come follow me home. She told me a friend of hers would be boarding the train very soon, and when he did, she told me his name was Ray. Ray was going to be filled in about everything and agreed to escort me home. She promised me that I could trust him. The two of them had waited with me until I got to my stop. The man, still watching me, started to smile widely, resembling the Cheshire Cat. He shouted, "This is your place, right?" To which I didn't respond, and just gave the woman a hug, and I thanked her. Ray and I hurried and hopped off the train. As I looked back, I saw that the woman had pulled out her pistol and told the man to sit back down, and blocking the exit with her body. I finally let myself cry in relief. Ray had walked me home and tried to calm me down by telling me about his job. After watching me get inside the gates of my apartment safely, I thanked him profusely for his help.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.